The Indianapolis Colts are legitimate contenders this season. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of HorseshoeHuddle.com, joined as always by Jake Arthur, the boots on the ground for Round Table Sports. And welcome to Locked On Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network around. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. We have a fun show for you guys planned despite the bye week blues. We're going to be talking all about the Colts' place in the AFC playoff picture, and then we're going to dive into what that picture looks like, who the main contenders are in the AFC, and then look at this final stretch for the Indianapolis Colts and how it could shake up for this team that is currently at number 2 in the AFC right now. But Jake, the Colts sitting at 8-2, the number 2 seed in the AFC at their bye week. Again, if you told me this before the season, I would have called you crazy. But just to do a recap on how the Colts have gotten here so far. They have been just a machine this year, especially against the bottom tier teams in the NFL. I mean, when they've played non-playoff teams, they have a plus 150 point differential this year. Jake, it's been absolutely insane what they've done. They're boasting one of the best offenses in football, the best rushing EPA that I've ever seen in my time covering this sport in the last 10 years. And their defense, I think, is feisty, it's competitive, and it looks like it's going to get better here after the bye week with some guys returning. So, this Colts team, well-deserved of their number 2 seed, and even if we look at how they performed against playoff teams, it's been around 500. So that's usually the case we see for the best teams in football. Take care of business against the bottom of the league, and then against the playoff contenders and the true contenders, either split those games or have an above 500 record, and you're good to go. So the Colts, I think on paper, kind of fit what we see from typical, top 4 seeds in playoff pictures every year.
Yeah, I mean, they're a legitimately good team, and they are kind of feasting on those bottom feeders. They've been given a somewhat generous schedule to start the year, but they're taking advantage of it. They killed the Titans, the Dolphins and Raiders. They made quick work of them, but they're also going toe-to-toe with the matchups you would consider ones they have to steal or they have to split. They beat Denver. Denver is the number 3 seed right now. They beat the Chargers. The Chargers are the number 5 seed right now. So they're winning matchups against other playoff caliber teams. Now the Rams are near the top of the league in the NFC. And then the Steelers, I would say a pretty flukish game, but the Steelers are the 4th seed right now as well. So in terms of strength of schedule and everything, anything they've lost or played close has been a reasonable matchup. You know what I mean? So no, this is a great team that is led by strong trench play. The offensive line, and by and large, has been very, very good up until these last couple of weeks. Has been good in run blocking the entire time, though. They've just obviously had their issues handling blitzes lately, which is not just the offensive line. Defensively, they're getting plenty of pressure, and they've come up well against the run when they need to. They've definitely given up more on the ground at times than I would like to see. But there's neither side of the ball that's a huge issue. In the past, we've seen this Gus Bradley defense, the offense better be awesome in order to carry this thing, or vice versa at times, and neither side is a detriment. Defensively, they are definitely playing well enough to win. They create turnovers. They're the only team to get a turnover in every game this year. They are among the top 10 in sacks. They're a bit bend but don't break. They rank near the bottom in yards, bottom half in yards, but they're top 10 in points against as well. So defensively, they've been pretty effective. And then offensively, again, other than those 2 games where they just had a massive amount of sacks and turnovers, you could probably throw the Rams in there too. Those 3 ugly games, which they only lost 2 of those, they turned the ball over and gave up a bunch of sacks. So it's uncharacteristic for them to shoot themselves in the foot, but when they do, that's when they kind of tend to lose control of things a bit. But they've been pretty disciplined, very, very good in the pass game, and even better in the run game. Daniel Jones is leading in yards, and he's top 10 in pretty much every other passing metric. And then we've talked about Jonathan Taylor. Like, Jonathan Taylor is first in everything. So they've been really excelling in the areas that good football teams need to excel in.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think they have a good case so far for like deserving of where they're at. They're not having like a bunch of fluky wins. They're not having a bunch of one-score wins that could go either way. Like, sure, they have a couple in there, but I think they're 3-2 at one-score games this year. That's a pretty adequate, like, it's a pretty average, middle of the road thing that we see from teams, is being around 500 at one-score games, because those are more coin flips. It's about taking care of business in the other ones. So, yeah, they've been a good football team this year. They're well deserved of their 8-2 record. But now looking forward, Jake, again, we talk about teams that are like true contenders and teams that are kind of like pretenders. Again, when you look at like teams in the past who every single win was a one-score win and every single loss was a multi-score loss, that typically tells us that they're not like a true contender type team. But there are other things too, like just going off of like the way that I kind of value football teams. Like, can you pass the ball effectively? Can you convert in short yardage, convert on the money downs, third and fourth down on offense? On defense, can you get off the field on those money downs? Can you cover with the best of the teams out there? And are you converting in the red zone and stopping teams from converting in the red zone? And I think when we look at this team, like offense, they check every single box, right? They can pass well. They're a top 10 passing offense in EPA per play. Again, the greatest run offense that's ever existed in EPA per play. Yeah. They convert in short yardage at a very high mark, despite a couple of issues last week. And the red zone offense has gotten a lot better throughout the year as well. I think they're still top 10 red zone offense as well. The only issue really comes down to the defense, right? Can they get off the field on third downs, and can they hold teams to more field goals rather than touchdowns in the red zone? But a big thing with this defense projecting forward is once they get Mooney Ward back here, hopefully against the Kansas City Chiefs, you're talking about one of the best secondaries in the entire league. They have length, they have speed, they have playmaking, they have guys at every single position, and it's going to allow them to be a lot more aggressive, especially on those third downs and in the red zone. So maybe this is like the projecting part of this here, but I think, the addition of Sauce Gardner and the return of Mooney Ward makes this defense like a contending level defense compared to what we saw earlier in the season. So for me, they kind of have a lot of the ingredients I look for of a true contending team in this AFC playoff picture.
Yeah, and we've seen them be kind of hot and cold on red zone and third down. Red zone, they've gotten better. There was a game recently where they converted all of their third down attempts, which was, I think, one of the first times that had happened all season or in quite some time. There was some glaring statistic in terms of the Colts converting all those. But then defensively, just last week against the Falcons, held them, totally fruitless on third down. So things are getting better. Like you mentioned, add Mooney Ward into the mix here. That's going to allow Lou to get real weird with it, whatever he wants to do. And then hopefully you get Buckner back in week 15. And then over the final four games of the regular season, you could turn it up even another notch. And then you've got kind of a quarter of a season with your entire defense, what you hope it looks like heading into the postseason. Because, Buckner being key on those third downs, being key in the red zone, keeping teams, kicking field goals instead of touchdowns with those two cover corners out there. Like, I think you really want to see everybody together at least for a couple weeks before you get into the playoffs. There's a good chance the Colts matchups in the playoffs are going to be rematches from this season. Because again, Steelers, Chargers, Chiefs, like there's several teams in here, Broncos, that they've already played. So to have a full complement in your defense, knowing how you can have everyone play together against those teams and throw some new variety at those teams that they haven't seen you put forward yet, I think that would be huge.
Yeah, I'm especially curious to see though, like how this defense looks with the full secondary, even without Buckner these next couple of weeks, because I think it's easier to survive the loss of Buckner than it is to survive the loss of one of those outside corners. And I know that's crazy to say because Buckner's an awesome player, but you can do so much when you have multiple guys in the secondary that you can trust in pretty much any coverage whatsoever. And you can scheme up pressures. It's hard to scheme up coverage when you have replacement level guys in coverage like we saw earlier this season. So I think we're going to see a lot of showing 5 or 6 man rushes, and then we'll see which guys they bring out of that. They'll mix in some 5 and 6 man rushes as well. They'll do everything they can to generate pressure with the top tier coverage they're going to have on the back end. So I'm really curious to see what it looks like against Kansas City if Ward is back for that game. And it seems like it's trending that way, so hopefully. But yeah, if they get all these guys out there, I'm so excited to see what this defense looks like, because I really think it can be a championship caliber defense, especially against offenses that can't run the ball very well regardless, because that might be their one Achilles heel without Buckner. And luckily down the stretch, they don't face many teams that run the ball at a high level. So we shall see what it looks like, but I'm excited for this defense. I think this Colts team is a contending level team though, as long as they stay healthy the rest of the way with what they've been doing. So coming up, though, we're going to look at the rest of the AFC picture and talk about the Colts' biggest threats in the AFC. There are obviously some new teams, and then there's the one team that's obviously looming because of, recent NFL history for sure.
This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there is no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere that PrizePicks operates, and that includes California, Texas, and Georgia. Zach and I have both been using PrizePicks lately. Pretty much all of us around the network have been doing it for quite some time now. Football Sundays, especially, this one without the Colts playing, NBA tip-offs, all that. It keeps every game exciting. You can pick guys like Patrick Mahomes that we're going to talk more about in a bit, or Steph Curry. You can see how your predictions play out. The new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves with an injury, then the injury reboot saves your lineup from a loss. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, welcome back, everydayers, and thank you for making Locked On Colts your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the galaxy. We knew it was the world or Earth, but I'm saying galaxy because I don't think the aliens have as prolific of a sports network as we do. So I'm calling it now. But we are going over the playoff picture, the Colts being, the #2 seed, how they got there, what they're doing right. But now we're going to look at the rest of the picture. Who's in right now, who's kind of on the outside looking in the hunt. And then before we get off here today, we're going to talk about the Colts' final 7-game stretch and what that looks like. So let's go over this real quick, Zach. You got the Colts being unseeded for the #1 seed because they're on their bye week, and the Patriots got to face the Jets on Thursday. So they moved to 9-2. They're the #1 seed now. Colts are 8-2 again. The Denver Broncos are the #3 seed. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 4. And you got Chargers at 5, Bills at 6, Jaguars at 7, Chiefs at 8, Texans at 9, and Ravens at 10. Everybody else is a game further below that and most likely out of it. So what do you think of this, Zach? There's, we've got some games highlighted here for the Week 11 slate. There could be some carnage taking place this weekend.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's going to be really curious to watch just from our perspective here, being the bye week team. You can sit back, let these teams beat up on each other and fight for their lives while the Colts can get healthy. But yeah, Patriots already done with their game this week. They had a bye week as well, essentially, but they get to add one to the win column with their bye week, sadly. The Broncos and Chiefs, obviously the huge matchup this week to see who comes out on top there, see if the Chiefs are really going to make a run at the AFC West title. If not, if they lose this one, they're pretty much out for that division. They'll just be fighting for a wild card spot for sure the rest of the year. But yeah, it's a lot to look at here with this AFC playoff picture. I will say the most intriguing aspect of it is, you don't see the typical MVP type guys up there as one of the top seeds, right? Sure, Drake May might add his name to that list, or Jonathan Taylor could add his name to that MVP list by the end of the season. But the top 4 quarterbacks in the AFC right now are Drake May, Daniel Jones, Bo Nix, and Aaron Rodgers, while guys like Herbert and Allen and Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are fighting for their playoff lives right now. Like, that's the craziest part about the AFC. But yeah, like the teams that when I'm looking at it here, you can make a case for a lot of these teams. Patriots, I think, are a feisty, competitive team. I'd be a little bit nervous about such a young quarterback in his first playoff experience, like, because the playoffs are just a different atmosphere than the regular season. So I don't know if they're going to be like a deep run team this year, but I mean, if you get the 1 seed, you're already pretty close to making it to the Super Bowl at that point.
Yeah.
So they're going to be there until the very end, especially with their schedule. The Broncos, their offense is just the worst thing I've ever had to watch in my life, but their defense is one of the best things I've ever had to watch in my life. Like, it's a really fun defense, a really good championship caliber defense. And if their offense could even kind of figure it out, they've already won 8 games without their offense figuring it out. So like they're a competitive type team. And then you just can't count out the Bills or the Chiefs or even the Ravens, because again, they have MVP caliber quarterbacks each and every year, especially that Chiefs team though. That Chiefs team, no matter how ugly it looks in the regular season, they turn it up a notch when they have to. They get into the playoffs and they become just this terrifying team. So there are some good teams here in the AFC to keep an eye on for sure. But Jake, what are the teams, like, what really stands out about this playoff picture to you?
Yeah, I think there are some teams hanging around here that are just kind of waiting to be put out of their misery. Like the Jaguars would be the final team in right now. If the playoffs started today, I'm just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop with them. The Texans at 4-5, they're in the hunt, but again, one more loss that could do them in. And then the Ravens, they dug themselves such a hole early in the year, and then Lamar Jackson got hurt, that it's tough. And we talked about some of those matchups. You mentioned Denver and KC. Those teams are probably both fine. But like the Steelers at the number 4 seed atop the AFC North right now, they play the Bengals. And the Bengals are, like you mentioned, they're feisty enough. They go, and if they beat the Steelers, well, suddenly you might have the Ravens atop the AFC North. The number 10 seed could go up to be the number 4 seed. And then, the Chargers are fine. I think they'll be there. The Bills are fine. The Chiefs, again, they've got that tough matchup. I am looking at 2 teams, though, who could be facing kill shots this weekend. The Texans have Tennessee, and I'm going to flip that to you in a moment because I know you've got a hot take on that. And then the Ravens with Cleveland. Those are division games, man. Like, if Cleveland beats Baltimore and sends them to 4-6, now, like, they're going to be close by a proxy of being in the AFC North, but like that could be too much to overcome if they can't wind up catching the Steelers who are perpetually around 500. And then the Texans, again, just kind of waiting to be put out of their misery. If Cam Ward and the Titans coming off a bye week send them to 4-6, they'll get CJ Stroud back at some point, but their offensive line still stinks. Their defense is carrying them, but is that enough? That seems like a team that's just mostly they're hanging on by a thread.
Yeah, I will say this. Like, I do have a hot take that I think the Titans might give them a run this week just because they've had 2 weeks prepare for it. They're still going against a backup quarterback in Davis Mills, and I think we kind of lose. There's a reason why this guy's a backup quarterback when he's coming off a magical win last week. But I will say, of the teams out of the playoffs right now, the Texans scare me the most. I mean, I'm assuming Kansas City is going to be in the playoffs. Outside of Kansas City, the Texans probably scare me the most because they do have a championship caliber defense.
They do.
And a championship caliber head coach, in my opinion. And if they they can just squeeze out a little bit of production from their offense, I think they can be a good football team. Where, like, the Jaguars have had a lot of luck on their side this year just to get to 5-4. I'm not really buying them too much. The Ravens, I still think they've kind of dug themselves in a big hole. And honestly, from a Colts perspective, I'm not that nervous about the Chargers or the Bills for the Colts because I've seen those 2 teams try to stop the run this year, especially the Chargers trying to stop Jonathan Taylor, and I just don't believe it from those 2 teams. So, like, if I'm looking at the Colts, like, what team scares me the most from the Colts' perspective, the Patriots' ability to stop the run is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And Drake May's ability to create is pretty good. And I know Lou would give him fits in the playoffs, but I think they would be a tough team for the Colts. But then it's probably like the teams with the tough defenses, like the Broncos and the Texans, would scare me the most from the Colts. And then you got to throw Kansas City in there for sure because it's just Kansas City. But yeah, like there's nothing here though like that tells me like a team that the Colts can't beat, which I think is beautiful about this year. There's no like undefeated team, or even the top teams like the Patriots and the Broncos are good but flawed teams. Like Drake May takes a ton of sacks and has had some turnover games as well. Like he's not this perfect infallible quarterback. So there are issues with pretty much every single team in this AFC picture, which bodes well for a competitive Colts team with a lot of talent like they've had, who's going to be getting better once they get Mooney Ward back. So I think every single team on this list, the Colts can beat. And I think that's a great, I mean, gosh, they could be in a position where they're going to the playoffs with every team kind of being a beatable team for them. You don't get a chance like that very often in the NFL.
Yeah, and I don't want to discount the Steelers, obviously, either. I know the Colts did a ton to beat themselves in that one, but the Steelers forced them into those mistakes. So if the Steelers are alive, that defense can do some things. I'm not really worried about their offense. And then one more matchup to watch this week, Chargers and Jacksonville. Now, the Chargers are closer to the Colts in record, but you kind of want to check off that division crown first. Yeah. So it's go Chargers against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Add another game of separation in there, and that's, the Colts, I feel at least confident in saying they'll take the AFC South. I don't know whether they'll finish first through fourth, or one of those, obviously, but they'll win the division.
Yeah, I'll say your rooting interest this week for Colts fans is anyone against the AFC South teams competing for a playoff. So we're looking for Titans and Chargers to win. We want the Chiefs to win. Hear me out here. You want the Chiefs coming off a victory going against the Colts and not fighting for, or go against the Broncos, not fighting for their life before the Colts game. Like have a little bit of leeway there. So you want that. And also you want the Broncos knocked down a little bit. Then you don't really care about the NFC or the AFC North. Right. Like whatever happens there. They're going to get the 4 seed and nothing else. But yeah, I'd root for the Chiefs this week. I'd root for the Titans this week and the Chargers for sure as a Colts fan. But coming up, guys, we're going to dive into this final stretch for the Colts and how it looked pretty daunting a couple of weeks ago, this final stretch, and now it's looking a bit more pedestrian for this Colts team. We're going to get to it in just a second.
Famous last words before the Colts 0-7 stretch. All right, we are flying through the NFL season, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between the queues, the login screens, and the prices jumping up out of nowhere at checkout, it's just completely frustrating. But that's why we use Gametime here at Locked On Podcast Network. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Gametime is fast, it's easy, and it's backed up by the Gametime guarantee, which means you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included so that the price that you see initially, that's what you're actually going to wind up paying. I recently pulled up Gametime in just a couple of clicks. I saw amazing deals talking about your favorite NFL games across the country for as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact views from the seat before I was going to buy. Really love the zone deals too. That means you pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. For those of you who are indecisive, perfect little clutch move there for you. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. All right, welcome back, everydayers. We are talking about the Colts and the AFC playoff picture. And now the Colts coming off their bye. They cannot lose, obviously, so they're kind of nestled into the standings there. But we're looking ahead to next week and this final stretch of 7 games. It's regardless of how you look at it, it's the toughest stretch of the season for them. It's when their schedule gets the most difficult. The quality of opponent goes up a bit. But at the same time, the Colts have already shown us they can beat anyone. They can compete with anyone. And the crappy teams are usually going to blow them out. And there are a couple of those on here. So, Zach, let's look at this. Obviously, next week coming up, you got a trip to Arrowhead, taking on the Chiefs, who they'll find their way into the playoffs. They're just in the picture right now. And then you've got at home against the Texans. And then you've got the cursed game on the road in Jacksonville, week 14 after that. You got to fly out to the West Coast for the 3rd time this season to face the Seahawks after that. That's hopefully the week you get DeForest Buckner back. It's his first week being eligible to come back if they're able to get that done. Then you got Monday Night Football the next week at home at Lucas Oil Stadium against the 49ers. That will be the first time the Colts wear their Indiana Knights uniforms at night, so that'll be a big deal. And then you've got your final regular season home game against the Jaguars week 17, and then they finish up on the road at Houston. That one's TBD. That's a flex game. They'll figure out the timing of that one when it gets closer to time. I don't think the Texans are as good as the NFL thought that one was going to be, so they kind of left that one open-ended. So, Zach, what do you think about this final 7-game stretch? I mean, surely they're not going to sweep it all. I mean, there's some losable games in there, but it's all very winnable as well.
Yeah, I think when we were looking at a couple of weeks ago, it was like, okay, the Colts got to get to their bye week at like 8-2 because this could be 7 straight games against playoff caliber teams, with the Texans eventually figuring things out. The Jaguars are looking like one of the better teams in the AFC. 49ers are surviving their injuries. Seahawks and Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs have kind of been up and down all year, but the Seahawks look like this NFC juggernaut this year. And the last couple of weeks, it's kind of like reshaped a little bit to where, yes, the Chiefs are still this like team that we're all scared of just because of recent history, and they have Pat Mahomes. Like, I get it. The Seahawks have honestly looked better than what we would have thought going into this because they just keep getting better and better. But the rest of the teams there look kind of winnable games now, or like not like they weren't winnable games before, but like not as daunting a games. Like the Texans, yes, that defense is legit, but CJ Stroud's been now 2 weeks out with this concussion injury, and he hasn't been playing his best football this season. That offense has been very up and down. They do seem like they're figuring some things out, but I'm not going to take some comeback win over the Jaguars as like some coming out party for that team. And then speaking of, the Jaguars just blew like a 20-something point lead in the fourth quarter against the Texans team with their backup quarterback. And we're starting to see kind of like their luck change a little bit this season. Travis Hunter is also out for the season as well. So that Jaguars team seems like they're trending down in a big way. And then the 49ers just don't have bodies left on defense to stop anybody. And we're seeing that, like, yes, they can still put up points on offense, and Brock Purdy might be back by then, but it looks like they're starting to trend down as well. So what looked like this ultra like daunting, terrifying, like 7-game stretch looks like one really scary team at Seattle, and then a couple of winnable games in here for the Colts. Now they can still trip up in this stretch. Like, divisional games are always difficult in the NFL. Like we saw the Patriots, it took them a minute last night to really pull away from just a terrible Jets team. It took until outside of halftime to really pull away from them. So divisional games can be tricky, and you don't want to take them lightly, but the Colts getting 2 home games against, the Texans and the Jaguars, I think those are easily winnable games for the Colts. And yeah, I think they're just better than pretty much every team here outside of like Seattle. So I'm really curious to see what their statement game looks like coming out of the bye against the Chiefs, because that'll be the huge one. If they can beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead out of the bye, I don't know what the excuse is for everyone else around the league, and we've been saying this all year, like as they've been racking up the wins, like, you can only put them down for so long, but you're looking up and they're a double-digit win team, or they're close to it now. But I think if they're able to beat the Chiefs coming out of the bye here, that'll be huge for just how they view themselves, how people around the league view them. That'll be a big one for them. But yeah, this final stretch doesn't look as terrifying to me as it did a couple weeks ago, where I was saying like, yeah, we got to get to 8-2 going into the bye just to give ourselves some leeway. Now I'm hunting for that 1 seed, Jake. I'm hunting that 1 seed. And I'm looking at the schedule and like even the Seattle game, like Seattle's a great team. Like they're awesome, but they're not some unbeatable team. Like the Colts can certainly beat them on their good day. It's just going to take a really good game from them. So yeah, I think it's going to be fun down the stretch here. And I think the Colts have a good shot to have a winning record over this final 7 and maybe win enough games to get that 1 seed.
Yeah, I really like their matchup against the Chiefs coming out of the bye. Honestly, I know that sounds dumb, but I think they match up pretty well with the Chiefs. By then, you hope that you got Sauce and Mooney Ward at corner. The Chiefs don't really run the ball effectively. So if you're pooling your resources against Mahomes in the passing game, if that's the strength of your defense, great, because it doesn't really matter what the run game looks like because the Chiefs just don't execute that well. I think for a long stretch, Mahomes was their leading rusher, if I remember correctly. So I think the Colts match up pretty well there. The Chiefs defense is always, as long as Steve Spagnuolo is there, they're always going to be good. So like that's something to worry about. I think it's going to be
They've struggled this year. They've had some really bad games this year.
Yeah.
It depends on how amped up they are for that one, because Spags can really game plan for one game.
And that's the thing. I trust him. I trust him if you like needed a win. So like I can't ever discount him.
They're gonna hold the Broncos to like 3 yards on offense this week, because that's just how the Broncos offense is. And then they won't have the ultra game plan for the Colts, is what I'm hoping for. Anyway, but if you're looking at where right, if you're looking for where the Colts are like vulnerable though, on this stretch, like the Colts have been struggling against really good defenses, and then defending the run, like the Texans with their good defense, the Seahawks with their defense for sure. And then in terms of like great rushing offenses, Seattle-ish can kind of run the ball. Like
they're not explosive, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're productive but not explosive. The rest of the teams can't really run the football. I know people look at 49ers and say like, oh, McCaffrey, they can run the ball, but they're averaging like 3 yards a carry this year on the ground. Yeah. They've been dreadful running the football. So
McCaffrey's buttering his bread because he has like 90 pass targets already this season. So that's how they're doing that. But no, I do think, just like to be generous and being realistic, I do think the Colts probably drop like 2, maybe 3 of these final 7. Like there's just some tough matchups in there. Like you look at the Chiefs, obviously you look at Seattle, and then like the Texans, I hate that. I hate going against that defense. Like the offense probably stinks with or without CJ Stroud. I think the Colts defense will do just fine against whatever they do offensively. But there's just something about that, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. I don't like it,
Yeah, no, for sure.
You might get a loss coming out of Houston, and then obviously Chiefs and Seahawks you look at. But like with that in mind, I mean, you would take going 5-1 in the AFC South throughout an entire season. Like you're not always going to sweep them, of course. Like you already swept the Titans, but 5-1, you'll take that every year.
Yeah, it's hard to beat the same team twice. Like we had one of our commenters say here, it's hard to beat the same team twice. So I'm not trying to overlook like playing the Texans twice, playing the Jaguars twice, because even if the Jaguars are losing out this way, like they're going to be a tough out for sure. And the Texans with that defense are going to be a tough team to beat twice. But I think these are very winnable games for the Colts. Again, they're not playing the Seahawks every single week. The Seahawks are like the lone, like dominant team they have left. And I still think they can beat them with their A game. So overall, looking at this stretch, like the Colts are set up really well, sitting at 8-2. You essentially need 2 more wins to clinch a playoff spot, 3 to be really comfortable making
they're 2 wins away from 10 wins, man.
Yeah. So
LeBron James meme, can't believe this is my life. What has happened?
So the goal for the Colts is just continue what you've been doing, clean up some of the minor issues, get Mooney Ward back, and let's roll from here and really contend for a Super Bowl this year, I guess, right? I mean, if you trade all those picks for Gardner, you're going for it this year. So we will see exactly what happens. We'll be joining you guys back here on Sunday, though, with the Colts Squad Show to break down all the action on Sunday. Obviously, no Colts game to break down, but we'll talk about games that mattered for the Colts playoff picture and things like that. But thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen today and every single day, especially during this bye week as well. I get it's not as exciting without Colts football coming up, but we appreciate you guys nonetheless. The NFL season is in full swing, so if you're next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler the Madman Rowland gives you a shot of NFL espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube, where we listen to your podcast. You guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get the inside scoop? Follow the link in our show notes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on socials. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, where we listen to your podcast. We love you guys' ratings, views, and we'll catch you guys back here Sunday evening for the Colts Squad Show.